Hello and welcome back to Pin My Podfic. This will be the reading of After the Fall by innocent_reader of Chapter 11, Beneath the Guardian Shadow, Part 1 and 2. And so, yes, I haven't taken my allergy pills yet, so if I just stop for a sec, it's just a sneeze coming in. So yeah, let's get on with the chapter. Chapter 11, Beneath the Guardian Shadow, Part 1. The hum of the jeep's engine echoed faintly through the vastness of the Batcave, small and almost inadequate against the enormity of the space. For a fleeting moment, Alfred felt the absence of the deep, resonant growl of the Batmobile. That familiar sound which so often heralded Bruce's return. Now it was an ordinary vehicle descending the middle ramp, carrying not only weary youths, but also the weight of a legacy they were still learning to bear. Inside, silence mingled with heavy breaths. Roy kept both hands firmly on the wheel, his eyes fixed forward, as if forcing himself to be the anchor for them all. Wally tapped his fingers lightly against the door, incapable of stillness even in exhaustion. Midoriya watched the cavern with sharp eyes, drinking in every detail as though it were his first time. Zatanna sat upright, determined not to reveal the unease gnawing at her, and Dick, in the front seat, remained quiet, his gaze locked on the tunnel ahead where the diffuse light of the hideout blurred into shadow. Alfred waited at the foot of the ramp, posture straight though his heart raced. For an instant, he almost expected Bruce to emerge from the vehicle, as he had countless times before. Instead, he saw those youth's young faces, the same mixture of fatigue and resolve. In that moment, he knew it was time to treat them not as visitors, but as rightful heirs to the home that had to endure. He stood as he had so many times over the decades, hands clasped behind his back, posture impeccable, eyes steady though unrest churned within. Around him the cave felt frozen in time. Computers dark, armor stands empty, bruises absent, a wound invisible yet present in every stone, every shadow, every silence. The engine cut off, and the silence that followed was heavier than the ride itself. Dust settled slowly on the damp stone floor as the jeep doors creaked open one by one. Wally jumped out first, ever eager to be in motion. Though Alfred noticed the subtle drag in his step, nothing escaped trained eyes. The boy tried to mask his fatigue with a brief grin, but the shadows under his eyes betrayed him. Midoriya followed, adjusting the strap of his backpack as if trying to disappear inside it. His gaze, though sharp, flitted restlessly, as if weighing each detail to avoid seeming out of place. Zatanna brushed her hair back with an almost automatic grace, elegance defying exhaustion that reveals sleepless nights. Roy came next, tall and upright, a soldier standing guard over the others. Alfred recognized the effort. It was an attempt to keep him steady, even as weariness seeped into his stance. Last was Dick. The boy kept his head high, but Alfred saw the weight in his eyes. Not just fatigue, but the burden of choices far too heavy for his years. Alfred said nothing. He did not see victors, nor the defeated, only survivors who refused to stop moving. He had barely stepped out before the discussion began, like gears unable to grind to a halt. Is the Zeta tube here still functional? Satana raised a small enchanted trinket, arcane symbols flickering faintly in the gaze's blue glow. Her voice wavered between urgency and uncertainty. Will it actually get us to the tower? I know it's late to ask, but I'm nervous. It's locked to League members only, Dick answered without hesitation, already moving toward the center console. The precision in his tone betrayed the exhaustion in his body. But if we use Batman's clearance, we can bypass the system. It'll work. It has to. Wally was at his side before he even finished, his eyes racing across the terminal, trying to keep pace with his own quick thoughts. The towers are only shot at centralizing comms, he said, tension sharp in every word. We can't waste time. Every hour, someone out there could be in danger. Midoriya gave a quick nod, though his gaze was heavy, close to breaking. We can broadcast a wide signal, he murmured, almost to himself. Find out who survived, who can still help, who's still fighting. As their ideas tumbled over one another, Roy stood silent a few paces back, arms folded, eyes in constant motion. He didn't need to speak. The soldier in him was still scanning the cave like hostile ground. Impatient, Zatanna already pressed her charm to the Zeta Tube's panel, whispering formulas so quietly even she didn't seem to believe them. And Alfred continued watching. The way each of them clung to the next plan, the next step, the next fight. It wasn't just urgency, it was escape. Escape from the silence, from the grief, from the loss that screamed loudest when one stopped moving. Bruce had done the same, for years, until the day he simply didn't come back. Alfred closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath, summoning strength for the inevitable. When he opened them again, his decision was firm. He stepped forward. The echo of his shoes rang through the cavern, sharp and commanding. And all 5 young heroes turned at once, as if only now realizing he was there. Standing tall, hands clasped behind his back, Alfred faced them with a calm that didn't request space. It claimed it. I'm afraid, he said, voice low but steady, filling every corner of the Batcave. I cannot allow you to continue. The words dropped like stones into a still lake, shattering the rush of anxious planning. Dick reacted first. He stepped forward, confusion plain in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked, stunned. There was no defiance in his voice, only disbelief. The idea that Alfred might truly stop them seemed unthinkable. And in that moment, before 5 exhausted youths, ready to break themselves before they'd ever stop, Alfred understood. He could no longer just be the butler, the quiet guardian who mended uniforms and prepared meals. He had to be the adult they had forgotten still existed. The voice they did not know they wanted, but desperately needed. Part 1 done. Chapter 11, Beneath the Guardian Shadow, Part 2. The silence that followed Dick's question was thick, almost tangible, as if the very air of the Batcave had grown too heavy to breathe. Alfred's eyes swept with practiced calm over each face before him. 5 young souls, all scarred by wounds no one could see, all driven by an urgency that looked less like a mission and more like an addiction. He didn't move, didn't even draw a deep breath before speaking. He didn't need to. His voice, when finally came, was low, measured, and impossibly steady, like the relentless ticking of a clock counting down to its final hours. Since the end of the invasion, he began, letting the words echo across the cavern's emptiness, you haven't stopped for a single moment to breathe. It wasn't an accusation. There was no anger in his tone, only a statement, a cold mirror he was holding up for them to see. You just kept moving forward, like soldiers, not like people. The weight of those words landed instantly. Wally looked away. Up, Wally looked away, shoulders sagging as though a burden he had pretended not to carry suddenly became too heavy to disguise. Midoriya's brow furrowed slightly, his fist clenching unconsciously at his side. Roy stayed rigid, jaw tight. Zatanna's gaze fell to the floor, her eyes lost in some far-off memory. And Dick stood his ground, silent, his jaw locked tight, unable to summon a reply. Alfred shifted just enough to turn toward Wally. His tone was soft, almost affectionate, but carried the sharp precision of a blade that never wavered. You, he said slowly, every word pressed like a weight upon the boy's shoulders. Haven't even tried to contact your family. Wally's head snapped up, eyes wide as if struck by a blow no one else could see. His mouth opened, ready to protest, but nothing came out. His silence betrayed the truth. Alfred's gaze did not break, his expression remained calm, unshaken. Iris West called the manor earlier. He paused, letting the name linger in the cavern like a ghost. Desperate, begging for news. Wally's chest tightened and he turned away, fixing his eyes on some non-existent point on the ground. His fingers drummed nervously against his thigh, a twitch born of his caged speed. Each tab grew faster, more frantic, like he was trying to outrun the truth the only way he knew how. She asked if you were still alive. Alfred nodded, not raising his voice, but with a firmness that pressed down like a stone. Wally's heart skipped. His fists clenched, and he swallowed hard, for the first time since the conversation had begun. His eyes glistened, though he blinked too quickly to let the weakness surface. And in that heavy silence, her image came rushing back. Iris, her warm smile, the faint smell of fresh coffee in the kitchen, the way her voice called his name when he came home late, all of it felt so distant now, so painfully out of reach, that it hurt worse than any wound a battle could leave. He wanted to speak, to say he was trying, that there hadn't been time, that the world needed him more than a phone call. But no excuse could survive beneath Alfred's gaze. Then Alfred turned to Dick, and the silence that followed was different from the one he had left with Wally. Heavier, more intimate. His eyes, tired but still steady, settled on the boy in front of him, seeing far beyond the mask. And you, Master Dick, Alfred began, his voice low, controlled, but weight enough to make the boy's heartbeat quicken. The one among them who should understand that it means to what means to carry a legacy, and yet you keep hiding behind it. The butler took a single step forward, his shadows stretching across the boy. You are not Bruce. His tone was accusatory, but absolute, like a verdict. You don't need to be. But by insisting on carrying the world the way he did, you are only repeating the same mistakes. And that, my dear boy, is the very last thing Bruce would have wanted for you. Dick's chest rose and fell rapidly. He didn't look away, but his jaw trembled with tension what he fought to control. In the back of his mind, a memory pulsed. His first training session in the Batcave, the first time Alfred handed him a warm glass of milk after patrol. Simple moments, but reminders of who he had been before the darkness. And now, hearing those words, Dick felt as if he stood at an invisible crossroad. Lois Lane called as well. She was crying. Dick didn't look away, but his pupils widened slightly, and Alfred caught the small, involuntary twitch of his hand crawling into a fist. Both of them were looking for you, Alfred added, his gaze sweeping across the group, and neither of them received so much as a single word in return. He let the sentence hang in the air, heavy enough to sink into each conscience, like a stone into deep water. Only then did he draw in a breath, slower, deeper, and stepped toward Midoriya, who had stared back at him with a mix of confusion, respect, and unease. Alfred raised one hand, not to touch him, but to point, as if indicating a truth that couldn't be denied. And you, his voice was so soft it nearly sounded like a caress. Yet it carried the sharpness of accusation. A boy from another world. You seem to care more for this one than yourself. At that, Alfred turned fully to the green-eyed youth, who had remained silent until now. His fists clenched so tight the knuckles shone white. Midoriya didn't flinch, but there was something restless in his gaze, something Alfred had seen before. It was the same fire he'd watched burn in Bruce's countless times. And the unspoken vow to sacrifice again and again until nothing remained but the shell of a hero. And you, Alfred's voice softened, but it did not waver. I know what you're thinking. If I push past the limit, if I endure more pain, if I stand alone, maybe I can save just one more person. Midoriya blinked, startled as though Alfred had opened a secret book he had never shown anyone. But do you know what happens to men who think that way? Alfred pressed on, walking closer step by step. They die. They die early. They die exhausted. They die without ever realizing the people they left behind will never recover from their loss. The word landed like hammer blows in the silence of the cave. Midoriya tried to answer, but his voice cracked. I can't stop. If I stop, someone else will suffer my place. Alfred drew in a slow breath, and finally rested a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. There was no anger in his eyes, only harsh judgment, only a sorrow that felt centuries old. Listen to me, young Midoriya. What drives you right now, is not courage. It is guilt, and guilt does not build heroes. It only breaks them. I saw it in Bruce. I saw it in every soul who thought they could carry the world alone. And I will not stand by and watch it take you too. Midoriya inhaled sharply, fighting against the sting in his eyes. For the first time that night, he didn't look like a hero bracing for the next fight. He looked like a boy, crushed beneath the weight of 1,000 defeats that were never truly his. Alfred kept his hand steady on his shoulder, his voice low and unwavering. You don't need to destroy yourself to prove you can save. If you truly wish to honor those already gone, then do it differently. Live, endure, take care of yourself, so that you may care for others. He lingered there for a moment longer, holding Midoriya's gaze, before stepping away. His eyes moved to Roy and Zatanna, sharp as if he were reading familiar pages from a book. And the two of you. His tone now carried a wary tone that made him sound older than his years. Instead of guarding yourselves, you've taken upon your shoulders the burden of entire cities. Star City, San Francisco. The city's name sounded like epitaphs in the cavern's silence. Roy kept his unshakable expression, like always, but Alfred noticed a faint tremor in his stance, the way he didn't want to admit. Zatanna discreetly bit her lower lip, clutching her cloak tighter around her body as if the fabric could serve as armor too frail to shield her from words that struck with such precision. Then Alfred strained to his full height, hands folding once again behind his back, the posture he always assumed before delivering the words that mattered most. His voice rang out, grave, deliberate, final. This burden will break you. He let the sentence fall like a funeral bell in the vastness of the Batcave, before finishing with a hardness that left no room for argument. And I, as the only adult present, cannot allow that to happen. The silence that followed was absolute. None of them moved, none of them spoke. They only stood there, frozen, like soldiers who had just been told their march was cancelled, unsure what to do with their own feet, which until now had never stopped moving. Wally breathed a ragged gasp, eyes glassy with unshed tears. Midoriya stared at the floor, struggling to understand how someone could know so much about him in so few words. Roy held his ground, but the nails digging into his palms betrayed the cause of his restraint. Zatanna looked as if she aged 10 years in the span of 10 minutes. And Dick remained fixed on Alfred, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with frustration, but above all, with the painful recognition that Alfred was right. And yet, we can't, Dick began, his voice low, almost as if he were trying to convince himself otherwise. But Alfred raised one hand, silencing him with a sober gesture. No one leaves tonight, he decreed, with the unquestionable authority of someone who had spent a lifetime caring for heroes who thought themselves immortal. Whatever business you think cannot wait, it will, until tomorrow. And then, when it seemed like silence would reclaim the cavern, Dick stepped forward. We don't have that kind of time, he shouted, a cry that came not just from his throat, but from his soul, from the anguish of knowing that the world outside was still burning. And Alfred simply looked at him, unmoved. And that was it for part 1 and 2 of chapter 11, Beneath the Guardian Shadow of the fic called After the Fall by innocent_reader. Oh, innocent with only one N as always. And the link in the description of always their work. And I had to like split this into the recording session into 2 days because I didn't have time to fully, do everything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed and all that. I'll end the recording at this point.